Awesome. Well, first off, I just wanted to welcome everybody today. This is our first analytics and reporting afternoon, so we're excited everybody could join us. I'm sure I've met most people, but if you haven't met me yet, my name is Kevin Fremore. I'm the SVP of Media, Technology, and Data at the 4As. And we're excited to bring a number of industry experts, a number of different companies, so you can hear different perspectives on reporting and analytics and AI and automation and a number of other topics. We are gonna move on to Justin Canning, head of sales at Akkio, an AI-powered analytics platform designed to help media agencies activate all of their data across the campaign lifecycle, streaming workflows, and enabling data-driven decisions that drive better client results. In this session, Hugh Griffiths, past global chief product strategist for KINESSO and founder of Trevor and Sons, will also join Justin to discuss how transforming agency reporting and analytics processes can drive smarter decisions and better results for clients. Justin and Hugh, thanks so much for being here.
All right, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then we can jump right into this. Let me just get that all set up. All right, so Kevin, thanks for the intros here. I'm Justin Canning, and Hugh is joining us today. Today we're going to chat through some AI use cases and more specifically focus around audience building and how using AI to build audiences can help unlock massive gains and efficiencies. Hugh's going to walk through some common challenges with current tools. I'll then take you through a live demo of the Akkio Audience Studio, and then he's going to wrap up with a breakdown of the impact of using AI to generate these audiences, and then we'll take some questions from the group. Hugh, I'll do a quick intro on my side. I think Kevin covered a lot of it, but Justin Canning, head of sales for Akkio. I've been with the team here for about 2 years now. My background, worked at Admiral for 5 years, more recently as head of North America sales, but joined this team because I saw some of the great stuff that they're building here. And Hugh, I'll kick it over to you.
Sure. Hi, Hugh Griffiths. I'm a media and advertising consultant based in the US. Spent the last 20 plus years at the media agencies within 2 of the larger holding companies, actually the same holding company now. Yeah, essentially working within those organizations until relatively recently. Yeah, as Justin said, before we get into the demo, I wanted to just give a little bit of context as to why I'm excited about what Akkio are doing. When I started in media agency world, I said 20 odd years ago, I realized, or I started to think that, and when I looked at the core capabilities and the core deliverables that media agencies were producing for their clients, I started to use the analogy in my head that they were essentially a series of bets. I probably never said that out loud, but in my mind, I thought them as a series of bets. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, when I think about a media plan or a flow chart, right, that is essentially a bet based on all of the information that I have today. It is a bet on what I think is the right budget allocation, channel mix, partner selection, flighting that I need to put in market in order to deliver the business objectives for the client that I'm working for, right? It is essentially a bet based on everything I know today. And at the same time, when I talk about target audiences, I'm essentially also, it's another bet. These are the people that I think are the most susceptible to the messaging that we're putting out there in order to move the needle and deliver the business objectives that I'm trying to achieve. So I always, in my mind, thought of these as a series of bets. But if I look over the last 5 to 10 years or so, I think agencies are doing a decent job in minimizing the risk around the first of those bets, right? Essentially what an agency is doing, they're still delivering media plans. They're still making a suggestion on what a media plan should be. But they're also saying, you know, as soon as this plan is in market, I'm going to be measuring and optimizing it. I'm going to be checking how effective that plan is at delivering against the objectives. I'm going to be learning which channels, which partners, which strategies are essentially delivering what I need to do. And I'm going to be shifting money around. I'm going to be optimizing the plan based on the feedback that I'm getting as the campaign rolls out. And I think that's great. But a lot of times, if you look at the end of a campaign versus the beginning of a campaign, you'll see a very different channel mix, a very different partner selection, but the audience definition is largely the same. And that same amount of experimentation around or shifting around different components of a media plan hasn't necessarily been applied to the audience definition. Tends to still be relatively similar to what was put out at the start. So the question is, well, why is that, right? And I think there's a couple of reasons. I think, firstly, agencies, I think, have done a good job of beginning to embrace more of an experimentation mindset, starting to think more about how can I test different things? How can I see which are the more effective things to put in market? And how can I learn from that? They are doing that, but I think their focus has been more on the first of those problems, meaning the channels, the flighting, the partners. And I think that's because there's a more obvious line of sight to ROI from that, right? The measurement frameworks that are in place do a pretty good job of saying, if I move money from here to here, I'm going to see this impact. So the amount of sort of mental effort put against experimentation and optimization has really been more focused on the channel piece. And it hasn't necessarily yet extended into thinking about dynamic audiences or how could the audiences be optimized as the campaign plays out. So I think there's just a bit of a mental shift that needs to happen. Secondly, I think there's a practical reason. If you think about how audiences are built within the agencies, it is still largely a data scientist that's sitting on a large data stack and producing an audience that then gets pushed through the system. And that can be a bottleneck when you start thinking about dynamically adjusting audiences, changing them, trying different versions, pushing a lot of them out into a campaign. There's a bit of a bottleneck when it comes to who's actually producing them. So being able to democratize how audiences get built, I think, is a really important point. And I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done there. There's also, I think, something that's sort of underpinning all of this, and it's around the data itself. I think there is kind of an assumption that all of the data elements that are being used to build these audiences are of equal quality. I'm not always sure that that's the case. And there's a bit of a gap when it comes to knowledge about which of those data elements are more predictive of a high quality audience. There's a bit of a lack of understanding as to which data elements should be used when you're building an audience. And so all of that, I think, has led to kind of a bit of a stasis when it comes to audience experimentation. Like I said before, I think the channel and the plan experimentation and optimization is in decent place, but I think the audience piece, agencies are sort of a little bit stuck. And the thing that I love about Akkio and what Justin's about to demo is that it really helps unstick some of those things and solve some of the problems. So Justin, do you want to show us the demo?
Yeah, great. Thanks, you. Some quick background on Akkio before jumping into the demo. So we are an AI native platform for media agencies. Our approach is to help agencies make a product and platform that is unique in your way. So we start with the Akkio platform, our core technology that allows you to chat with data to clean and analyze it, chat with data to build visualizations and do reporting. And also we have an AutoML engine where you can do any classification, regression, and time series forecasting. So that's the core underlying platform. It's combining these really high-powered AI technologies into one centralized place where you can build really unlimited workflows on top of those core functionalities. Then we layer in the agency's cognitive architecture, which is your data, your industry knowledge, your know-how, how to tackle problems certain ways, how to read the market in different ways. And then we look at the workflows that are going to be scalable across your different client teams to build solutions that will unlock maximum efficiency and work across multiple clients. So the result of all of this is a platform that is unique with your DNA that powers every decision made with data, and a lot of that starting with building audiences. So we are building these different workflows that can help streamline operations end to end across the entire campaign lifecycle. But the one we'll jump into today is the Audience Studio, and I'm going to do a live demo here. One quick or two quick notes. One, Akkio does not own or license any of our own data. We're the product layer that sits on top of your data to make it easier to work with all of this data and enable new workflows. And the data set I'll be running through today it's synthetic data that we've created. The model we have is having a spine of users and some supplemental data sets to map against that spine. But just wanted to make those clear before jumping in here. So in the Akkio platform, I'm going to start by building a new audience here. And to get a quick preview, what data sets do you have access to? I'm going to ask which data sets we're working with here. So the way this works is embedded within your actual cloud infrastructure and running operations directly on a data warehouse. In this instance, we're using our own Snowflake instance, running all these operations on Snowpark, which gives us the ability to chat across multiple data sets simultaneously by giving context about these data sets to the LLM. So you can see we have our attributes data set. This is our spine of users. This data set is only 1 million users. Typically, they're in the mid 250 million, which is no problem for us from a scale standpoint. We also have other supplemental data sets that you can map to this spine, our auto data set, credit card purchasing, small business data set, media browse or media summary, browsing data, CPG information, places visited, etc. And let's start by asking to build an audience of EV owners in coastal states. So what's going to happen here? We're first going to get a plan of attack. So right now the LLM is navigating across all these different data sets to understand what are the different data points in each of those data sets. We'll point to one, an EV owner, two, in which states, and then we'll start to pull out all the information about that audience that makes this really actionable. On the right-hand side, you can see just some high-level statistics, starting with the simulated population. High-level metrics you're going to want to see about every audience: the median household income, median age, gender distribution, distribution of household ownerships. And as soon as we get this plan developed here, and then we can go and build the audience. So you can see here's the approach that we're going to take. Here's the detailed plan that goes a little bit deeper in a step-by-step. Here's how we're actually going to build that plan. And then here are the sources that are being used. So right now we're using the spine of users and this auto data set. And what you'll see is there's a toggle here. You can toggle on and off any data sets for a particular audience, which if you're working across multiple clients, you're going to want to use the different data sets you have in different combinations. So we give you the easy ability to just toggle those on and off. So great. I love the approach here. Let's build the audience. And this is now going to update here on the right-hand side with this updated audience of those EV owners in coastal states. And coastal, you'll see the definition is any state bordering a coast. You could always specify specific states or narrow that down to different regions from a coastal standpoint. But you can see all the charts here on the right-hand side just updated. We now have a count of the individual, the count of households, the count of email addresses, phones, and IP addresses in this particular audience. Here's a table of all of these users. And here's the sources that we've used and the code that is generated to run against your data warehouse to actually produce this audience. So we're very transparent. We want to make sure from an observability standpoint, you can trace back any query to the actual initial data sources. So there's no questions about where this actual data is coming from. So great. We love the audience. We'll save the audience. And let's start to dig into this audience a little bit further now. So from an insight standpoint, we can templatize and customize any of these reports that are auto-generated based on the different types of data sets that we have access to for this particular client. So what you can see from a demographic standpoint, we've got information on how large this audience is compared to the total population. A lot of what we do is comparing to the actual general population. So we're making sure we're not over-indexing on some of these decisions we're making. Again, median age, household income, but then we see some key differences in this case. These are all, again, auto-generated through AI. So we can see that income, there's a much higher pool in the $60,000 to $74,000 range. Gender is undetermined in a higher population here. Education is graduate level from a lesser standpoint in this group, et cetera. Digging down, you've got age, gender, presence of children, presence in different states, ethnicity, projections, household income, et cetera. If we have financial information, we can break down this audience a little bit further into their financial health, net worth, credit card types that they have. From a purchase standpoint, you can see what are typical items that they purchase, different ranges, purchase spend, et cetera. And again, always comparing that simulated population against this audience that we created. Everything from media usage, we've got some horse racing fans in this group, different programs that they tune into on a more regular basis, automotive information here. And if we have first-party data here from the customer, we can even do some like really quick and easy RFM analysis as well. So if we want to then dissect any of those individual groups within your RFM analysis output any further, whether it's like super loyal customers, high net worth, new customers, then, really easy for us to do that and even go deeper in those sub audiences as well. And when you think about the time it takes to go from nothing to having an audience to doing all of these individual reports to get to where we are so far, we're talking hours worth of work here that we're able to do in about 4 minutes so far. Hugh, jump in. Oh, sorry, your hand's up. If you have any additional ad hoc questions about the data that don't fall into those pre-templated metrics here, then you can come into the Explore tab here and ask any questions about this audience. So if we want to go a little bit further and see a bar chart of income by state, this is going to generate a chart for us. I'm going to quickly jump over to the predictive model tab and just kickstart a model here. It takes about 45 seconds, but I don't want you staring at a white screen for that long. And as this is running here as well, I'm going to jump to the compare tab here. This is where you can compare any audiences that have been pre-built and similarly can compare those audiences to each other as well. So if you're running a national campaign and you want to regionalize the approach and understand what EV owners are like in different pockets throughout the country, you can compare them in coastal states. Some other ones I built previously were EV owners in the Pacific Northwest and Midwest. So you can see all of these different statistics that we auto-generate to compare these audiences across different regions here. You can see where there's some overlap. You can break down comparisons by any different data points that we have here. See the comparison by set-top box, for example. Again, we can go a lot deeper from an overall geographic standpoint, even compare different interest pools against these users. And this helps with everything from just better understanding your audience to see what might resonate in different regions, what are other interests you can feature in different creative and copy and things like that. So a lot of really deep dives you can do into these different data tables that you have, and all of this is again auto-generated. But if you do have any of those specific questions you want to dig into further, then jump right into the Explore tab here. So here we
Justin, sorry to interrupt you. A quick question that came in for me, and I had the same question too. What are those data sources, like always on data sources that you're using to populate the audience information? Is it Kantar or Nielsen? Is it other licenses that they would bring to the table? What's the source?
Yeah, it's whatever the agency is bringing to the table, the agency or the client in this case. So it depends on how updated you can get that data fed in. But the beauty of having AI is that if typically it was you were constrained and only looking at things on a monthly, weekly, or quarterly basis, then try to make the ask to get that data piped in more real time so that you can get more value out of that real time data. So it totally depends on the data sources that the teams have access to.
Great, thanks.
So when these charts are generated here, we can always save any reports and reports or any charts, graphics, tables, or any text-based outputs into a reports tab. So as you're building up your audience to present to a client, or if you want to just work with a client in real time together on this, then really easy to build a report that has all of the different artifacts you've put together into a report here. You can add in any notes, add in any charts from other parts of the project that you've worked on here. So really easy to build a report here that you can easily share out with the customer, or again, walk through with them together. So what we've done so far, we've built an audience, we've explored it, we've gone really deep into that audience. But if you then want to take that audience and build a lookalike model from that audience pool, this is where in the model tab here, you saw I kicked off that model before. you can see from a lookalike standpoint, users that are 60% likely to fall into this audience here. We've got about 1,400 members. We have this slider where you can balance the propensity to purchase versus the audience size that you need to target. So we make it really easy to do that. We show you the top interests in this group, the factors that we use to build that lookalike audience. So, really easy to take an audience and build a lookalike off of that. And then, even keep doing that and going much deeper, especially if we're using like first party data and can do that RFM analysis and build lookalike audiences off of your most loyal purchasers, your newer purchasers, et cetera. So being able to bring in first party data into the platform here opens up a lot of possibilities from a lookalike standpoint here. The last piece, so currently, we're working on these integrations where you can push these audiences directly to these individual platforms, and of course you need the IDs or the different different identifiers to push into these platforms. But we're going to build those connectors to push all of these directly out to platforms to make that just a whole lot easier. Currently, it's very easy to just export this back into your data warehouse and use that to push directly to platforms. But we're trying to eliminate that one step there. So that's the platform at a really high level. I know I just spoke very quickly through that, so definitely we'll take any questions at the end here. But Hugh, why don't you jump back in and chat a little bit more about the impact of this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the main impact, if I go back to some of those barriers that I talked about at the beginning, to me, this just democratizes access to many more people within the agency that can be hands on keyboard to actually build audiences, and it can be done in a much faster way. And all of that is necessary to be able to then fully embrace more of an experimental mindset around audiences, because you can test faster things, push out things faster, iterate faster, all of which were kind of a bit more of a bottleneck within the existing agency setup. I think it's more than just that, though. I think in order for this to be successful, yes, you need democratized access, but you then also need the agencies to sort of embrace that expanded experimentational way of thinking. It probably adjusts the way that you staff within some of the agencies around audiences. I think you need more experimental design thinking than data scientist thinking necessarily, because you no longer need the hands-on keyboards with those data science skills to actually produce them. But at the same time, you want to be able to deploy this and maximize the value of being able to rapidly iterate on audiences in market and learn from that. So you need to know how to learn from that. I think you need to think about how do you expand the measurement framework, so that back to the point before about how there's a really good line of sight into ROI when it comes to shifting money across channels. You need to have line of sight of what the ROI is of changing your audience definitions. And it's not obvious. And so there's work that needs to be done to expand the measurement frameworks and the processes around measurement and optimization within the agencies to fully embrace this new ability to do this. And I actually think it also has some unintended, interesting consequences for agencies too. I mean, I think about how agencies or clients are negotiating data access deals, right? A lot of times those are volume CPM based, right? And when you have the ability to rapidly test the actual business value of a data element quickly at scale, in theory, that should lead to a change in the way that you negotiate for access to that data. So maybe more of a dynamic conversation around pricing for some of these data elements than just the more static, flat CPM volume based that tends to be in place right now. So I think there's a lot of secondary value that comes from the ability to have those kind of conversations, as well as the primary value of being able to be more experimental in terms of the way you think about audiences and dynamic in the way that you think about audience testing.
Yeah, would agree with that. And the last thing I'll add to that as well is it does open up the opportunity to test out different data sets as well. So it's not just working on restructuring with the current data vendors and data sets that you have access to. There's a ton more data sets out there and data providers that are leveraging AI in really interesting ways to bring data together more effectively. So having a tool like this where if you can do that sort of rapid experimentation, now you can try stuff out with more data sets and try to map out, everything from social listening to different consumer purchase patterns to your first party audiences and really learn from that. So opens up a lot of different ways to experiment as well here.
Great. We have a couple questions that come through. I think maybe a good starting point would be questions. How does the AI model account for variation in audience behavior or intent over time? Hugh, I think that's what you were kind of mentioning. Sometimes audience isn't the thing that's looked at throughout the course of the campaign or adjusted for. How does maybe the model or the data account for some of that variation and surface some of that variation mid campaign?
Yeah, so from an Akkio standpoint, we can tie back the audience performance into a reporting suite. We can make it very easy to actually take that data from a data warehouse and do all of the reporting on top of that. So, in terms of, one thing that Hugh mentioned earlier, if you're doing your reporting on an audience for an entire year and maybe checking in on that from a monthly, quarterly, even every couple months standpoint, you can do that in more real time when you have access to AI-driven analytics tools to constantly be checking in and even setting up systems for real-time notifications on when an audience is exceeding certain performance thresholds or maybe falling off a cliff a little bit. So there's a lot of ways that we can track these audiences more effectively using AI, and Akkio helps to unlock a lot of that.
I think about some of the better dashboard reports that I've seen in place for clients. And in some of those cases, they've had sort of exception triggers in them, right? So as things are starting to come into the data warehouse, if the performance of something crosses a certain threshold, then it gets flagged. And it's, in theory, you could lead that to make an automated optimization decision. But a lot of times it's more flagged and then somebody looks at it before they decide to start moving money around. But imagine if you got to the point where you could see that based on the elements of the data that have gone into an audience definition, right? So that you've got an audience that's created with 6 data elements, and then you have a 7th, and you think, I wonder if this helps or hurts. And so you have a secondary audience with the 7th data element in it. And imagine having a dashboard that then actually flags that data element 7 is causing an outperformance of that audience. And you do that at scale across all of the data elements. And then it becomes an incredibly powerful insight tool as much as an optimization tool. Why is that data element triggering? What's going on there? Why is that particular element important in this category for this brand? Right there, that could trigger a whole bunch of messaging implications, of targeting implications, of everything. But that's the sort of thing that can start to be put in place when you get that feedback in and you have the ability to test that 7th data element,
The next, I'm going to try and combine the next 2 questions just because we have a couple of minutes left here. The first one is really just around the maturity of the data. So what level of maturity is required to be able to implement this effectively? I think that maybe an extension of that can be what level of data analysis vocabulary does the user need to have for the AI chat to be able to be meaningfully communicating with the AI model? So it's sort of like, I think those are 2-part, right? It's like, how clean and effective, or how clean and accurate does the data need to be? And then what level of capabilities does the user have to be able to interface with it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's there is certainly the data in inputs or data in data out story of like if it's super messy, it's going to be tough to work with. We do have cleaning functionality within the platform here where you can clean and transform data and normalize it using natural language and prompting and building some of those pipelines to make that a whole lot easier. So we can help with doing some like data transformation and data cleaning work at scale. A lot of our modeling is also pretty robust to messy data, and the way that we've set up the LLM to be like conversational in nature can even start to flag some of those things as you're asking questions. Our CEO always says like messy data doesn't really scare us. We've been working with messy data as a platform since we started a couple of years ago. better data it will lead to better outputs, especially like accurate data is needed to get accurate results here. So from a cleanliness standpoint, like good data is better, but we can help to clean up some of that messy data. And Kevin, there was a second part to that question.
The second part of the question, and I of course just moved it. It was really around the data analysis vocabulary does the user
Right.
need to have to be able to interact with the AI chat? So meaning how difficult is it, I think, for a user to communicate with the models themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it depends on if you're really data savvy and you know the data really intimately and you know exactly what you're trying to get out of it, you can ask a really specific question. But if you're not very familiar and this is a new data set to you, then you can use the LLM to actually have that conversation to say, walk me through what's in the data. How could I analyze this? If I'm trying to optimize for XYZ, what are some approaches I can take? So it can be a very conversational tool. It's like having a highly trained data scientist that knows the data intimately sitting right next to you and working on the same keyboard. But if you are that highly trained data person, you know the data really well, you can bypass a lot of that conversational piece and just get right to tell me exactly what I need to know. And it'll do it a whole lot faster.
Justin, Hugh, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. If there's other questions that come up, like I mentioned earlier, we'll be sharing contact information and details from everybody. But thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.